Hello, hello. Happy Sunday. Uh, as always, let me know if my sound is all right. I've actually swapped back to my Yeti microphone because I listened this week and the AirPods, not a very good sound. So give me a thumbs up if you can hear me or something in the chat to say we are all good to go. And then we can get moving with tonight's topic. So, yay, I've got a thumbs up. Thank you, whoever that was. All right. So, tonight I want to talk about inflammation because inflammation, lipedema is an inflammatory disease, right? So, it's both causes inflammation and is made worse by inflammation. That is what an inflammatory disease is. I have two. I have thyroid disease and lipedema. They are both inflammatory diseases. So, pretty much a lot of what we look at is about inflammation. And if you think about all the things that I've been diving into, like MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, that is just inflammation that's been caused by lots of different triggers, by our mast cells causing, inflammation within by dumping all the histamines. But that's also a downstream issue. There's like root causes of all this sort of thing. And it's just like, it's just this never ending search. So I don't know what you do about it. It's just this, you've just got to be consistently looking at what things can individually cause inflammation for ourselves. And we'll all be different. You'll be different to me, I'll be different to you as to what causes inflammation. But the more we know about it, the more we know about it, okay? And that's what I'm always trying to find. So I found some things this week in my deep diving into MCAS and a few things like that I was like, oh, I didn't know that was an inflammation thing. So I've got 10 on my slides that I'm going to share with you, but I'm also going to share with you a sneaky 3 or 4 others at the end that I didn't have time to add to the slides. But I was like, and I didn't have more information on. So I have to do further deep dives into those. But I'm like, oh, this is something we need to know, right? So let's share my screen. And we want a window. And there we go. All righty. Here we go. All right. Signs of inflammation in lipedema. The sneaky ones you didn't know were signs of inflammation. All right. For those of you who are new around here, and for those of you who have been here before, here's the standard rundown of who I am and why I'm here talking about this. If you have not been here before, feel free to pause this and have a little read. So for the sake of everybody else that's been here a million times, we will keep on moving. Okay. Oh, but this is also to show you that this photo here was only about 3 years ago. So never lose hope, never give up that you can't change things. And I have to change this photo because I've now had surgery on this bit and my boob lift about 4 or 5 weeks ago. So even this has improved. So all I've got left going on now is the lipedema legs, which is a whole other journey, as we all know, right? So that's the biggest journey of all. Okay, oh, wrong way. Let's go this way. All right, disclaimer. Put your big girl panties on, go and see your doctor. All right? Don't come at me if you try something and it didn't work for you and you have reactions, all right? Be sensible about it and try things that seem like it's a good idea and that there's no implications of, and then move on. All right, that's my little, how things work. All right, why are we concerned about inflammation? It's, as I just said in the beginning, lipedema is an inflammatory disease. And generally, like me, most people have more than one going on. Even if you don't realize that you do, it can attract, once you've got one chronic inflammation type situation, then you tend to attract others because that's the cascade effect within our body. So an inflammation from a specific to lipedema perspective, it makes lipedema worse. So, and it attracts other diseases and other long-term diseases, right? So if we have inflammation in our body, we've got big problems, if it stays there for too long over time. All right. Number 1, snoring. Did you know snoring is inflammation? I covered this in in an MCAS video a couple of weeks back, or maybe it was the live on the weekend, because I didn't know that snoring could be a sign of inflammation. And there's actually a thing called upper airway resistance syndrome. So I learned that in my research, and I have not gone into that yet, but just so you know, snoring is not always a situation of sleep apnea. Okay, so it can be swelling of the airways. So if you're not a snorer and you suddenly start snoring, or it comes and goes or whatever, it can be systemic inflammation at play in your airways or in your nasal passages that cause that problem. So an action step, well, apart from trying to figure out what upper airway resistance syndrome is and addressing that, well, it's got to be about reducing our inflammation in general, right? And also having an anti-inflammatory nightly routine. I've started now on my Sunday night cuppas having chamomile tea because it's an antihistamine, but also anti-inflammatory. So there's a few different things that you could do, and addressing the nasal congestion. Whether it works or not, I think the whole thing is that you'd have to reduce overall inflammation for this to happen. But eucalyptus oil might be worth trying, different things like that. But know for a start that it's not necessarily sleep apnea, and it's not necessarily thyroid disease. Thyroid disease, I learned, can cause snoring, which I have. I've got Hashimoto's. But it's the inflammation caused by those issues that's causing the snoring, not anything else. So I thought that was like, if you didn't know that, tell me, because I was like, I had no idea. Number 2, oops. Okay, brain fog, inflammation. We just think of brain fog as, it's a thyroid thing, or it's a lipedema thing, or it's a, I just can't function thing, whatever it is. But it's cytokines, which are inflammatory mediators, crossing the blood-brain barrier and interfering with, you're on the chamomile tea too again, good on you, interfering with neurotransmitter function. Okay, so it's not you're just getting tired, or you're just getting older, or it's just menopause, or all of those sorts of things. It's inflammation in the brain. Okay, so it's common in thyroid disease, it's common in autoimmune disease, and blood sugar issues. So action steps, and we're going to find that the action steps become rather repetitive because it's kind of the same thing over and over again. All right, stabilize your blood sugar, have protein for brekkie. When it comes to brain fog, that's one of the best things you can start your day with, is have protein for brekkie. I have 3 eggs for breakfast every morning, pretty much without fail. There's the odd one if I've been up for an early morning coaching call at, 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. But even then, lately, the last couple of weeks, I've had several calls at that hour. Yes, I get up at 1:30 a.m. for these calls. I have eggs at like 2 o'clock in the morning because I want to have protein before I have the coffee, because coffee spikes the blood sugar and sends your insulin up and down. So I know that by having protein before the coffee, you blunt that spike and keeps your blood sugar more stable. So you find me at 2 o'clock in the morning quite often making scrambled eggs really quietly so I don't wake my husband up. So that I can have my coffee, so that I can get my brain fog cleared before my coaching calls. So bizarre, hey? All right. Number 3, sign of sneaky inflammation, morning stiffness. No, it's not just getting older. No, it's not just climbing out of bed going, I'm getting old. No. This is all your joints being affected by inflammation driving stiffness. And how you know whether or not it is a mechanical issue or an inflammatory issue is when you exercise. So if you get up and you go for a run, I don't, my husband does, but I don't. If it goes away, the stiffness goes away, it's inflammation. If you get up and you do exercise and it gets worse, then that's mechanical or a structural thing, right? So before I had my double knee replacement, and I thought it was just inflammation in my knees, and I kept trying to exercise my way out of it. It just got worse and worse and worse. It didn't improve. And it wasn't until I had my MRI and the surgeon said to me, can you stop exercising, please? Right, like now, that I understood. So if you're getting up feeling stiff in the mornings, how you figure out if it's inflammatory is, as opposed to structural or mechanical, like osteoarthritis is set in, is whether or not it goes away when you move. When you start moving around and it improves, you know that is chronic inflammation throughout your body. Okay. It's often tied to autoimmune diseases. And the action step is gentle morning movement and an anti-inflammatory diet. Okay, this is going to go over and over and over again. Okay, number 4, acid reflux. Did you know this? I did not. So it's often treated as too much acid, but not always the case, depending on what you've got going on in your body. Chronic low-grade inflammation can be the cause of acid reflux. I did not know this. So an ongoing medication can cause even more problems, right? So there's a tricky part here. The action step is to identify trigger foods and to trial apple cider vinegar. Now, this is really tricky because I know somewhere online there is the understanding that apple cider vinegar, if you put acid on acid, taking apple cider vinegar will tell you whether or not it's a case of too much acid or not enough, because often that feeling of reflux is not enough acid in the body as opposed to too much. So this is a really tricky road to navigate, and I don't even pretend to know how to help you from this perspective, except that you just need to know if you have acid reflux and it's been ongoing, it may not be just a case of too much acid, depending on your situation, right? Everybody's different. It could be chronic inflammation in your body. So, and that's what the idea of this one was, is sneaky little symptoms that we don't know are inflammation. Okay, number 5, mood swings. Did you know mood swings can be related to inflammation? Okay, so inflammatory cytokines directly affect our serotonin and dopamine pathways. So if we're having a big wave of inflammation because we've eaten some shit food that's terrible for us, or, whatever's caused inflammation, that can cause the cytokines to release, and therefore we have these mood swings, okay? So it's not just hormones and stress that does it. It can be external influences that alters our inflammations and our inflammatory pathways, and therefore alters our moods in the moment. It can just happen in the moment, right? So action step: blood sugar balancing, omega-3s, potentially, gut health, and nervous system regulation. Same, right? We've got to deal with the stress. We've got to need an anti-inflammatory diet, and we've got to keep our hormones and our blood sugar stable. It's the same for everything. Okay, next one. Number 6, bleeding gums. Now, we all know bleeding gums. Well, we don't all know this. That's very generalized. There's a lot of research out there around bleeding gums can be, a cause of infections in the mouth, and it can be linked to cardiovascular disease. Now, there is a million research studies on that now. They do a lot of that sort of work. But it's basically, if you have bleeding gums, it's not about gingivitis or this other thing. It's just a sign to you that, your whole body's inflamed. All right, you've reached a systemic inflammatory overload in your body. And it can change day by day. You have a day where you've eaten carnivore purely all day, and you have gotten fresh air, and you've had the first morning light and reset your circadian rhythms, and you haven't, put on any perfumes or any, chemicals on your skin and all the things. You've had a perfect day, right? No bleeding gums. Then the next day you do all the opposite things and all the bad things, you'll have bleeding gums, right? So this can literally change day to day and tell you how good you've been to your body when it comes to inflammation on any given day. An interesting thing to track, right, on your diary: when have you had bleeding gums? Because it's not, we look at these individual symptoms often as in these boxes. I talk about these boxes and how we like to box things into these and I'm great for it. I love having everything in sections and compartments. It makes my brain very happy to compartmentalize everything. But sometimes we've got to step back and go, oh, even these little things that seemingly are related to the mouth and to the, this part of the world, then no, it could just be an overall sign that, oh, you're inflamed today. And that's all we want to do. That's all we want to do is we want to look at some of these signs and symptoms and go, oh, forget about all the intricacies of it and what it could mean directly. A plus B equals C. Bleeding gums today. I ate or I had a life that was quite inflammatory to me today. It equals inflammation. That's kind of what I want to get to, and that's kind of how I work. I try to look at any of these symptoms that I get during the day, or, as one-offs or out of the blue, as a situation that's like, oh, I'm a bit inflamed at the moment. I need to address that. So, yeah, tell me if you get the bleeding gums. But anyway, action step here, vitamin C for the cardiovascular and CoQ10 also for the heart, because that's what they're related to, at reducing the sugar. And definitely don't ignore this one. If you have bleeding gums ongoing, there are very strong links to cardiovascular inflammation and diseases. So you'd want to get that checked out. All right. So another situation where you need to get yourself to the doctor and sort yourself out, and don't be afraid to face it, kind of thing. All right. Next one. Number 7, weight gain. Now, weight gain when it comes to inflammation you can go up 2-3 kilos, 5-6 pounds overnight if you're, really inflamed, particularly around the middle, like the bloating, that sort of thing. And visceral fat around the organs secretes inflammatory cytokines, right? So it creates a feedback loop, creating more fat, more inflammation, and it keeps on going. So if you have sudden weight gain around the middle specifically, then you're going to look at inflammation more than you're going to look at, how many cream cakes did I eat yesterday? It's a little bit more serious than just looking at that. And often it's a case of, no, you didn't eat any of that sort of thing. You were just exposed to some kind of inflammatory agent, chemical, toxin, bacteria, whatever, that you don't agree with, that your body doesn't agree with. So it's not just about calories driving fat storage. This is a completely different pattern for that. And it commonly happens in menopause, right? So unfortunately, it's the way it is. So the action step here is, again, blood sugar levels, address insulin resistance if you know you have it, an anti-inflammatory diet, cortisol and stress management, right? Nervous system regulation, same, every time. Okay, weight gain. That's number 8, dry eyes. Okay, so inflammation affects tear gland function, right? This is another one I had no idea. I knew that dry eyes was attached to hyperthyroidism, more importantly to Graves' disease, but had no idea that it could be an inflammatory issue just on its own. But it's often early autoimmune signals of Graves' disease and Sjogren's. Is that disease or syndrome? Or I'm not sure what Sjogren's moniker is on the end, but it's often an early sign of that. But what it is actually inflammation. Dry eyes is inflammation, I was like, oh, you kind of think of inflammation as wet, moist, pussy. You don't think of it as dry kind of constitution, right? So that's why I was like, oh, really? So action steps here. So, and it's not just screen time. So you might be sitting at the screen for however many hours a day doing work, doing all the things and thinking that that's why you've got dry eyes. If that goes on over time, you need to get it checked out, because it could be your body talking to you, telling you that there's something else going on underneath it that you're not aware is happening. So that needs to be addressed. Action steps, omega-3s, hydration in this case, for the tear secretion and that sort of thing. So, and address autoimmune screening if it's persistent. If you've had it, if you've had dry eyes for more than a couple of months, chronic disease is considered something more than 3 months that you need to take something or use an ointment or something externally to help you with that disease or issue. So chronic can simply mean you've had it longer than 3 months. So if you've had dry eyes and you haven't had them checked out for longer than 3 months, you need to get onto that. All right. Okay. Next one, skin tags. Let's talk about skin tags. Now, I've often talked about skin tags in my thyroid world as being a skin issue, as a blood sugar issue, right? Too much sugar, which it is, and it's strongly associated with insulin resistance because you've had too much sugar. But the bigger picture at play here is that insulin resistance and that sugar imbalance is causing inflammation. Okay, so the more skin tags, the greater the chronic inflammation in the body. So if you've got more than one or two of these going on in your body, or they've just suddenly popped up out of nowhere, then that's something you need to look at. And if you're too afraid to head to your doctor and get blood tests and look at, pre-diabetes and blood sugar regulation, all that sort of thing, get yourself a blood sugar monitor to prick your finger. I have one, which will tell me both ketones and blood sugar, and face the data. All right. This is just data in your body. Okay. It's not something to fear. It's just information telling you that, oh, your blood sugar's out of control. You need to do something about that. All right. And if you want to make sure that you lower the inflammation, then you're going to need to do something about it. And then that's the hard part, right? The hard part is actually following through and doing things and reducing the sugar when you need to be comfort eating and all of this sort of thing, because that's all tied up with our emotions, right? That's why I work in the emotions world, because we can't give up a chocolate or a gluten or a white bread or all these things that we're addicted to, because generally it represents something that we're holding on to, right? So it's like such a tricky thing to navigate. So don't be hard on yourself. Just get the data right now. Just get the data and know where you're sitting, know where your blood sugar's at, know if you're well over, know if you're handling it, know if you're in insulin resistance or anything like that. And I would do that if you have a lot of skin tags, all right? That's a sneaky sign of inflammation in our body. All right. Oh, number 10, waking up between 1 and 3 a.m. So in traditional Chinese medicine, it has a clock, right, of different organs that are active, the most active in certain times of the day. So between 1 and 3 a.m., it's your liver. Your liver that's its time for trying to release things and clear things and do all its work. If you wake up at 2 o'clock every morning without fail to go to the toilet, it's not about going to the toilet. It's not about your kidneys, right? It's your liver being overburdened and trying to process all the things that are causing inflammation in the body. All right. So inflammatory cytokines follow a circadian rhythm. So that's your inflammatory. So cytokines are all the things that are released by different things, that mast cells and things like that in our body, and they're usually the byproducts of things like hormones and toxins and sugars, because it's always the byproducts. And when we kill things off, even if we kill off a candida cell or something like that, the byproduct, the off-gassing of that, is potentially worse on our bodies and makes us feel worse than the actual original thing that we were trying to kill, which is why detox feels horrible, right? Because what we're doing is we're coping with the byproducts of it being released, and our liver has to process that. Now, if your liver is this little sponge that's absolutely full of other, toxins, bacteria, pathogens, heavy metals, you name it, then it's going to really struggle to deal with the next lot that is coming through. Okay, many of you have asked in the past about coffee enemas. That is why I do coffee enemas. Coffee enemas are like a dialysis for your liver. It's like they take that sponge and they wring it out. It wrings it out so that the next lot that comes through can actually be caught. All right, so that's just a little side step on why I do those. All right, so if you're constantly waking at 2 o'clock in the morning, this is a liver issue. This is your liver trying to cope with the inflammation, and it's not doing a good job of it. That's the sign, right? That's what your body's telling you. Oh, we're not coping too well with this. Okay, so what's the action step? Even out the blood sugar, less sugar in the evening, potentially magnesium to help you sleep and relax, reduce stress. The magnesium is for sugar and stress. And reduce stress at night. Don't go to bed watching scary movies or, staying up spending 2 hours on the latest bad things that are happening in the world or this sort of thing. Why stress yourself out before you go to bed? I mean, that's just crazy. That's crazy bananas, right? Just don't. So do the nice things. Look for the nice things. I try very hard to make sure my Instagram feed, and I'm really bad at posting on my Kylie Wolfig Instagram page. You can follow if you want. Sometimes I post, sometimes I don't. But what I follow on it, I'm really careful to only follow lovely things, right? And I've trained my Instagram to give me all beautiful, uplifting memes and things like that so that I feel good whenever I look at it. And it takes like an hour to train your algorithm, I promise you. So maybe if you're going to do something at last thing at night before you go to bed, train your algorithm and look at all these lovely things that make you feel hopeful and like you can tackle the inflammation tomorrow and all of that sort of thing, right? Because feeling good, being happy, that's anti-inflammatory in its own right, okay? So feeling angry and feeling upset, that is inflammatory. There you go. There's another sneaky one. All right, let me pull up my little other side list of the things that I have, and I haven't got slides for this one, but hang on a sec. There we go, try anything. Let me undo this. Okay, now I'm going to tell you these other things that I found. All right, cracked heels. Again, because it's a dry thing. You don't think of it as inflammation. You kind of think of it like you're lacking, not like you got too much, right? That's my thoughts anyway. But cracked heels are a sign of inflammation in the skin. Go figure. Tinnitus, ringing in the ears, and I get that. So is it any wonder I snore too? So it's like ringing in the ears. It's inflammation in the vestibular tubes and all that kind of thing. Now I found this one, and I'm not sure about this one because this is a thyroid thing, but anyway, thinning in the outer eyebrows. So you'll see I have next to no eyebrows, right? Which is a good and a bad thing, right? It's a thyroid thing, right? If the outer third of your eyebrows have always been missing, that's a classic sign of thyroid disease. Thyroid disease is an inflammatory disease. The things that I came across said it was directly related to inflammation, but I'm not sure. I couldn't find anything to actually cement that one in, apart from the fact that it's a thyroid thing, and thyroid disease is an inflammatory disease. So take that one with a grain of salt. What else was there that was random? Oh, the only other thing was vertigo, and that's also can be lots of different things as well. But yeah, it's a weird kind of situation. So that was all the things I found so far. And I'm just looking at that end slide that I had, try everything and you'll never know until you try. I remember years ago going to I'm going to say it was a Weight Watchers meeting or something like that. That's what I think it was. And the lady at the front said, or taking the meeting said, you can have anything, you just can't have everything. Right. And that's like the same as this. You can try anything, you just can't try everything at once. You're going to just have to tease and do one thing at a time to figure out what your triggers are, what makes your inflammation worse for you. So I would take things one at a time, go back if you need to and have another look. But I'm sure if anything was relevant, you took a quick note like skin tags or whatever. But the bottom line with inflammation is the same thing. It's an anti-inflammatory diet. What is that? It's different for everybody, right? This is the tricky thing. So that's why, it's all about us stepping up and doing the things that we need to do for ourselves, because nobody can do it for us. Sure, that is possible, but you're going to pay money for it, right? You can have me on Zoom all day if you like while we tease this apart, but it will cost money. So, and I'm sure there's a million other people there that do the same thing, but most of us aren't willing to throw that kind of money at it. We want our doctors to fix it. We want our naturopath to just fix it. We want somebody to just say, no, here's your diet. Here's your diet. And it's not going to work that way, right? We've got to know for ourselves, because we all have different inflammatory triggers. We all get, we all have issues with different things, and there's no set thing for everybody because of that. I know it's horrible. It's crap. It's like you just think, I was saying to somebody yesterday that life is a bunch of sort of struggles, and in between those struggles, the spaces in between is kind of the spaces where we feel the joy, right? Because we're not immediately going through a struggle. It is what it is. And I choose to look at things positively, and I choose to go, you know what? Some things are in my control, right? Whether I eat chocolate at night or not is in my control. Trying to figure out what causes me inflammation and what triggers inflammation, that's in my control. I can do that. It may take a while, but it saves me having to have, tests which aren't reliable, right? And I'll tell you this now, because allergy tests and intolerance tests, they change every 6 months. Allergies aren't reliable. So it's up to us to just know how we feel after we've eaten something, or know how we feel when we wear perfume that day. Did you feel headachy all day and you didn't realize it was the perfume you sprayed on in the morning? That kind of thing. It is truly up to us to track our own inflammatory responses. And the more we can figure out that all these weird and wonderful little things like snoring and dry heels and skin tags and bleeding gums and all of this are actually signs of inflammation, chronic inflammation, we're talking, not just, a one-off daily inflammation thing, but chronic inflammation ongoing in the body, then we can start to put things in place. And then we can start to really decide, well, you know what, I don't want to feel like this. And the only way I'm going to fix this is to, get my blood sugar under control, get my stress levels under control. Generally, the only way to do that is to deal with your emotions. Sorry, but it's true. Deal with your stress, let go of all the things that you do that causes these issues in your body. It's yuck. But if you want to know more about emotions and stuff like that, I can put you in the right direction. So, send me an email or, comment down below, whatever. But if you also know some random things around inflammation that you didn't know that I haven't mentioned here that is really odd, please let everybody know and let us know what you're doing to mitigate your inflammation, because the more we can all have a conversation about this and share what we're all doing and finding out for ourselves, it may be a tiny missing piece for somebody else. That's why I tell you everything there is to know about my life pretty much, is because you never know. Like there might be one tiny little bit that you go, oh, that's it. Oh, of course, right? That's what we've got to do. We're a community. We need to help each other, right? So that's it for me this week, and there'll be another long form video this week coming as usual, and I will see you next Sunday night, and I hope everybody has an amazing low inflammation week. Bye.